From the moment Emma, a devoted yet struggling nurse, accidentally bumped into Jake, a seemingly homeless mechanic with grease-stained hands and a warm, mysterious smile, she felt a pull she couldn't explain. But little did she know, the man she laughed and shared stories with under the flickering streetlight wasn't just any man. Behind those ragged clothes and worn-out boots, Jake was a billionaire searching for genuine love, hiding a life of luxury and power that no one could ever imagine. As their worlds collided in unexpected ways, questions gnawed at Emma's heart. Why does this man, who seems to have nothing, make her feel like she has everything? And why does Jake, who could have anyone, risk it all for someone he barely knows but seems to know everything about? Emma wiped the sweat from her forehead as she hurried down the hospital corridor, the fluorescent lights casting a harsh glare over the linoleum floors. The night shift had been relentless, ambulances screeching at every 15 minutes, patients with urgent needs, and the never-ending bleeping of monitors. Yet despite the exhaustion pressing on her shoulders, she carried a quiet determination in her chest. She loved her job, loved helping people, but sometimes she wondered if the weight of other people's pain was slowly crushing her spirit. As she stepped outside for a rare breath of fresh air, the crisp night air felt like a balm against her fatigue. That's when she noticed him. A man crouched near a broken-down motorcycle, hands covered in grime, trying to coax life back into the sputtering engine. His clothes were tattered, a threadbare jacket over a faded shirt, but there was something in the curve of his jaw, the intensity of his focus, that made her stop in her tracks. "Need a hand?" Emma asked, her voice hesitant yet curious. He looked up, and the faint glow of the streetlight revealed eyes so clear, so alive, they seemed to see through her exhaustion straight to her soul. "I'll manage, thanks," he replied, his voice rough but warm, a voice that somehow carried both humility and confidence. Emma found herself smiling despite herself. Something about him, his hands working so skillfully despite the dirt, the way he never asked for help even though the motorcycle clearly needed it, made her heart tug in a way she hadn't felt in years. "You work on motorcycles often?" she asked, stepping closer, genuinely intrigued. "Every day," he said, wiping his hands on a rag, "but sometimes they don't cooperate." A crooked smile tugged at his lips, and Emma laughed softly, the sound blending with the quiet hum of the night. They talked for what felt like minutes but was probably hours. She learned his name was Jake, and while he claimed he was just a mechanic trying to get by, Emma noticed little hints, like the confidence in the way he spoke about complex machines or the subtle way he knew people, really knew them, that something in his story didn't quite fit the image of a man living on the streets. Emma's phone buzzed, reminding her of her long shift inside the hospital, but she lingered, captivated. She had always believed she had a good sense of people, a knack for reading intentions and truths. But Jake was different. He felt like an unsolved mystery, and she couldn't stop herself from wanting to know him, from wanting to see the world through his eyes for even a moment. Jake, on the other hand, felt a pull he hadn't felt in years. He had spent his life in a gilded cage, a billionaire living behind the walls of wealth and influence, yet starving for something real. His name carried weight, his bank account carried power, but neither had ever given him the one thing he craved: someone who loved him for who he was, not what he owned. He saw that in Emma instantly, the kindness in her eyes, the honesty in her voice, the way she didn't flinch at his disheveled appearance. As the night deepened, they parted with a promise, an almost unspoken agreement to meet again. Emma walked back into the hospital, her heart beating faster than it had in months, questioning why this brief encounter had left her so unsettled. Meanwhile, Jake lingered in the shadows, watching her silhouette disappear into the hospital doors, a rare feeling of hope stirring in him. Later that night, Emma lay in her small apartment replaying every detail of their encounter. She didn't know why, but something about Jake made her feel alive in a way she hadn't in a long time, and somewhere deep down she felt a flicker of worry. Was he really as he seemed? Or was there more beneath the surface that she couldn't yet see? Jake, in the meantime, returned to his penthouse, hidden behind the unassuming exterior of his day-to-day homeless disguise. Luxury beyond imagination surrounded him, but it felt hollow without Emma's laughter, without the raw humanity she carried like a light. He couldn't stop thinking about her smile, about the way her presence had made him feel less like a billionaire and more like a man. Both of them, in their separate worlds, carried a question that neither dared to speak aloud. What happens when two lives collide so completely, yet are built on such opposite realities, but the connection feels undeniably painfully real? The next morning, Emma's world felt strangely brighter, even though the hospital's harsh fluorescent lights and relentless beeping of monitors were as unforgiving as ever. She couldn't shake the image of Jake's eyes, the way he had moved with quiet confidence despite the grime and tattered clothing. Every time she closed her eyes, she could see him crouched over that stubborn motorcycle, determination etched into every line of his face. Her co-workers noticed her unusual distraction. "You okay, Emma?" one nurse asked, handing her a tray of supplies. "You look lighter somehow." Emma smiled faintly, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "I'm fine," she murmured, though the truth was far more complicated. She had never believed in love at first sight, not in the romanticized sense, but there was something about Jake that felt impossible to ignore. Something that made her question the routines and boundaries she had carefully built around her heart. Meanwhile, Jake had already slipped back into his daily routine, or at least the one that everyone around him believed was his reality. Under the guise of the homeless mechanic he projected to the world, he continued his private investigation into the city's charitable projects. The irony wasn't lost on him. The life he lived in public was a stark contrast to the luxury that awaited him in private. His mansion, high above the city skyline, was filled with priceless art, sleek furniture, and technology that made life effortless. Yet none of it gave him the warmth, the humanity, that he had found on the street corner with Emma. Days passed, and Emma found herself returning to that same street almost instinctively, hoping to see Jake again. Each time the motorcycle was there waiting, and each time he seemed just as absorbed in his work, as if the world outside his little corner didn't exist. "Back again?" Jake asked one evening, his hands smeared with oil, a playful glint in his eyes. Emma chuckled, brushing a smudge of dirt from her uniform. "I wanted to see if you were okay," she said, though even she knew her reason was more complicated than simple concern. Jake paused, as if weighing how much to reveal. "I'm fine," he said finally, but the corner of his mouth twitched in amusement. "Though it seems you're becoming a regular fixture here, should I start charging you for moral support?" Emma laughed, a sound that seemed to make the city hum around them. For the first time in weeks, she felt fully present, fully alive, and completely unguarded. Yet despite the laughter and the ease, a part of her remained cautious. Something about Jake's aura, the depth in his eyes, suggested there was more than met the eye. That night, as Emma walked home, memories of her past crept in. Her father, once a kind man with a love for fixing things, had taught her the value of honesty and hard work, lessons she carried into her nursing career. Her mother, gentle but fiercely independent, had instilled in her a sense of compassion for everyone, especially those society overlooked. And yet, despite all the guidance and love she had received, Emma's heart had remained untested in matters of love until now. Jake, too, had memories that tugged at the corners of his carefully guarded persona. Born into wealth, he had learned early that people often loved the wrong things about him: his power, his influence, his money, but never the man underneath. It had left him cautious, skeptical, almost cynical about love. But Emma, standing in the dim glow of the streetlight, had shattered that skepticism. She didn't flinch at his appearance. She didn't treat him like a mystery to be solved. She treated him like a person. Their connection deepened with each encounter, a subtle dance of stolen glances, shared jokes, and long silences that spoke louder than words. Yet the question of who Jake truly was loomed silently between them, unspoken but omnipresent. How long could he keep his secret before it threatened to unravel everything they were building? And what would happen when Emma discovered the truth that could either shatter her world or change it forever? Emma found herself thinking about him during hospital rounds, imagining the stories he might tell, the life he might lead beyond the street corner. She didn't understand why she felt such a pull towards someone so enigmatic, so seemingly out of reach. It wasn't just attraction. It was curiosity, concern, and a strange sense of destiny, entwined in one messy, exhilarating package. Jake, from the shadows of his dual existence, was equally consumed. Every interaction with Emma was a test of restraint and courage, balancing the man the world saw with the man he longed to be with her. He wanted to reveal everything, the wealth, the power, the life he had hidden, but feared that the revelation might destroy the fragile connection forming between them. And yet the longer he waited, the stronger the pull became, an invisible tether binding him to her in ways he had never imagined. On one particularly cold evening, as Emma helped him repair a stubborn engine, a gust of wind carried a scrap of paper from his pocket. She picked it up and saw in carefully printed letters the name of a luxury hotel in the city. Her curiosity spiked, a question hanging in the air between them. Why would a man who claimed to be homeless carry something that hinted at a world so far removed from the one he showed her? Jake noticed her gaze and smiled faintly, the weight of unspoken truths pressing down on him. Curiosity can be dangerous, he said softly, though the glimmer in his eyes betrayed a challenge. Are you ready to take the risk? Emma's heartbeat quickened. She didn't know the answer, but something deep inside urged her forward, toward the mystery, toward the man she couldn't forget, toward a story that had only just begun, but one she already feared might break her heart. Were still worn and dusty, his hair tousled, but there was a meticulous precision in the way he worked, a fluidity that spoke of skill far beyond mere street-level mechanics. Emma had seen enough hands-on labor to know this man was exceptional, but something about the careful way he inspected every bolt, every wire, hinted at a life she couldn't yet imagine. Evening, she said softly, trying to hide the flutter in her chest. Jake looked up and smiled, the same crooked, enigmatic smile that had stolen her attention from the start. Evening, Emma. You're becoming a nightly visitor. Are you sure you're just here for the company, or do you have some other motive? Emma laughed, brushing her hair behind her ear. Maybe I'm just here to watch someone who actually knows what they're doing, she said. Though the truth was far more complicated. Jake's eyes flicked to a small envelope peeking out from the pocket of his jacket. Something about it seemed incongruous with the life he projected, the worn fabric and the humble demeanor. And Emma's curiosity spiked. Before she could stop herself, she asked, "What's that?" He glanced at the envelope, then back at her, and for the first time, the carefully maintained barrier around his persona wavered. Nothing important, he said lightly, but the weight behind the words contradicted the casual tone. Emma's intuition told her otherwise, but she let it go, deciding not to push. Instead, she crouched beside him, pretending to examine the motorcycle's stubborn engine, though her eyes kept darting to that envelope. There was something about Jake that defied easy categorization. He was raw, untamed, yet there was a refinement, a meticulousness, in the way he moved that didn't belong to someone living on the street. As they worked, their conversation drifted to childhood memories, the kind that built the foundation of who they were. Emma spoke of her father, a gentleman with calloused hands who had taught her the beauty of fixing things, both machines and people. She remembered nights spent in the garage listening to the hum of his tools and the stories he told about patience and resilience. That's why I became a nurse, she admitted softly. I guess I like fixing people too. Jake's response was a quiet nod. I know what you mean, he said, though he said no more. Emma didn't press, sensing that beneath his calm exterior lay a story he hadn't shared with anyone. The night wore on, and Emma noticed how seamlessly he shifted between the rough mechanic persona and the subtle elegance in his mannerisms, the precision of his movements, the quiet confidence in the way he spoke, even the faint smell of expensive cologne beneath the grease. Something about the juxtaposition was intoxicating, but also unsettling. How could a man live in such stark dualities? And why had he chosen to present only this one side of himself? When Emma finally stood to leave, Jake surprised her. Wait, he said, handing her the envelope. Take this, I think you should have it. Emma hesitated, the crisp paper trembling slightly in her fingers. What is it? Just something I want you to see, he said, his eyes locking onto hers, the intensity almost too much to bear. But be careful. Some truths aren't easy to handle. Her mind raced as she walked home, the envelope clutched tightly against her chest. The city's sounds, honking cars, distant sirens, muffled conversations, seemed to fade into a background hum, eclipsed by the questions spinning in her head. What was inside that envelope? Why had Jake given it to her? And most importantly, who was he really? That night, Emma sat at her tiny kitchen table, the envelope resting between her hands like a secret waiting to be uncovered. Her fingers trembled as she pulled out its contents, a series of photographs, each more lavish than the last. There were images of Jake in a tailored suit, speaking at charity events, stepping out of a sleek luxury car, surrounded by people who clearly revered him. Each photo was a stark contradiction to the man she had met on the street, the homeless mechanic with a heart of gold. Her breath caught in her throat. The man she had laughed with, shared stories with, and felt inexplicably drawn to, was not who he seemed. He was a billionaire, living a life she could barely comprehend, hiding behind the guise of poverty for reasons she could not yet understand. Tears pricked her eyes, not from anger, but from the overwhelming complexity of her emotions. She felt betrayed, yes, but also intensely moved. She realized the depth of what she felt for Jake, the connection that had blossomed between them despite appearances, and now, confronted with the truth, she faced a choice: retreat into the safety of the familiar, or step forward into a world she had never known, guided only by the trust she had begun to place in him. As the city outside her window pulsed with life, Emma made her decision. She would confront the truth, seek answers, and follow the path Jake had unwittingly set before her. But she also knew the journey would test every ounce of courage she possessed. And somewhere deep in her heart a fragile hope flickered, that the man she had fallen for, in whatever guise he chose to wear, might also be falling for her in return. The following weekend, Emma found herself walking through the city park, the envelope of photographs still tucked safely in her bag. The sunlight filtered through the autumn leaves, casting golden patterns on the pavement, but the beauty of the day did little to soothe the storm raging inside her. She kept replaying the images of Jake in his other life, a life so dazzling and inconceivable yet undeniably real. How could the man she had come to care for, whose hands she had touched, whose laugh had ignited something she hadn't felt in years, also belong to a world so utterly different from hers? Meanwhile, Jake was meticulously orchestrating an event at one of his luxury hotels, a charity gala for underprivileged youth, an initiative he had funded anonymously for years. To the world, he was a powerful philanthropist commanding respect and admiration. But behind closed doors, his mind wandered to Emma, the nurse who had unknowingly become the axis around which his hidden desires revolved. He worried about the inevitable collision of his two worlds. Could she handle the truth? Could she forgive the deception? As fate would have it, their paths collided sooner than expected. Emma had decided she needed answers, and the gala, an event she had been invited to under the pretext of volunteering for charity, became the stage for revelations. She walked through the grand hall, her heart pounding, her nurse's uniform replaced with a modest but elegant dress. Chandeliers glittered overhead, casting prisms of light across the marble floor. The sound of laughter and clinking glasses filled the room, a world so far removed from the street corner where she had met Jake. Jake spotted her immediately, his expression a mixture of relief and apprehension. He excused himself from a group of influential guests and approached her, every movement precise, every gesture controlled, yet there was a softness in his eyes reserved only for her. "Emma," he said quietly, taking her hands in his. "I didn't expect you here." "I needed answers," she replied, her voice steady despite the rapid beat of her heart. "I saw the photos, Jake. Why didn't you tell me the truth?" Jake inhaled deeply, searching for the right words. "Because I was afraid," he admitted, the honesty raw and unguarded. "Afraid that if you knew who I really was, you'd see only the billionaire, not the man who—" He paused, swallowing hard. "Not the man who cares about you." Emma's eyes softened, a mixture of frustration, disbelief, and something deeper, a flicker of understanding crossing her face. "I don't care about the money, Jake. I care about you," she said quietly, though even she wondered if she was prepared for the life that came with him. The gala around them blurred, the glittering lights and the conversations fading into a background hum. For the first time, they were no longer defined by facades, his of wealth and her of ordinary struggle, but by the connection they had forged, raw and unpolished, yet undeniable. But as quickly as the moment had opened, reality intruded. A rival businessman, someone who had long sought to undermine Jake, approached with a camera flashing in hand. "Mr. Caldwell," he said loudly, drawing attention, "is this the woman who's been seen with you around the city?" The question hung in the air like a challenge, a provocation aimed to expose, embarrass, or manipulate. Emma felt the weight of the room shift, whispers weaving around her like a current. She realized the world Jake inhabited was dangerous, unforgiving, and far removed from the quiet streets and hospital corridors she knew. Yet as fear prickled at her, she also felt something stronger, a resolve to stand beside him, to face whatever this world demanded, not because of the wealth, but because of the man she had come to love, Jake. Sensing her determination, squeezed her hand gently. "Stay with me," he whispered. "I won't let this hurt you. Not now. Not ever." As the evening progressed, the tension eased slightly, replaced by a quiet intimacy. They moved through the gala together, Jake subtly shielding her from the prying eyes of the powerful elite, yet unable to completely hide her presence. And in those stolen moments, laughing softly, sharing glances charged with unspoken emotion, they built a bridge between their worlds, one delicate but resilient, forged not from wealth or status, but from trust and vulnerability. Later, as the gala wound down, Jake led Emma to a quiet balcony overlooking the city skyline. Lights twinkled like distant stars, reflecting off the glass towers and winding streets below. He turned to her, his expression solemn yet tender. "Emma, I've spent my life hiding, pretending to be someone else. But with you, I want to be nothing but myself. Every truth, every secret, every part of me. If you'll let me." Emma looked out over the city, feeling the weight of his words and the gravity of the choice before her. She realized that love wasn't about comfort or convenience. It was about courage, about risking everything for the connection that made life meaningful. Turning back to him, she nodded. "I'm ready, Jake, but promise me one thing. No more secrets." Jake smiled, a mixture of relief and profound joy washing over him. "No more secrets," he promised, though both knew that life would test them, that the collision of their worlds was only beginning. The city below them was vast and indifferent, but on that balcony, Emma and Jake had carved a space that belonged only to them, a space of honesty, courage, and love that defied appearances, expectations, and the daunting divide between wealth and simplicity. The days after the gala were tense yet charged with a quiet electricity. Emma and Jake navigated the delicate balance between their worlds, her life filled with hospital shifts, caring for patients, and quiet moments of reflection. His life enveloped in boardrooms, luxury, and endless obligations. Yet despite the glaring differences, a thread of connection tied them together, a tether of trust and love that neither could ignore. Emma still carried the photographs, now tucked away safely in a drawer in her modest apartment, a reminder of the man behind the guise she had fallen for. Every time she glanced at them, she remembered the fear, the curiosity, and the fascination that had first drawn her to Jake. But now, knowing the truth, she felt something new: confidence. Love, she realized, wasn't about the facades people wore. It was about the moments they shared, the honesty they cultivated, and the courage to embrace vulnerability. Jake, meanwhile, struggled with the pull between his private world and the one he had revealed to Emma. The board meetings, press conferences, and public scrutiny felt heavier than ever, each interaction a reminder of the life he had built on secrecy. Yet none of it mattered when Emma was near. In her presence, he could shed the billionaire mask completely, revealing the man who longed for connection, for intimacy, and for love untainted by greed or expectation. One crisp morning, Jake invited Emma to the outskirts of the city, to a place that held personal significance. The drive was quiet, save for the hum of the engine and the occasional glance she stole at him. Curiosity mingled with anticipation. They arrived at a small abandoned garage, the walls worn and paint peeling, but the space alive with memories of Jake's childhood fascination with machines. "This was my father's garage," Jake said softly, his voice tinged with nostalgia. "He taught me everything I know about fixing things, about patience, about seeing potential where others see waste." He paused, letting the weight of the moment settle. "I wanted to show you this because you remind me of him. You see people, you see possibilities, and most importantly, you care. Not about what I have, but about who I am." Emma reached out, taking his hand, feeling the warmth of his calloused fingers against hers. "Jake, you've shown me more than I could have imagined," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "Not just the person behind the wealth, but the person behind the struggle, the passion, and the heart. And I want to be part of that life, every part of it, if you'll let me." Jake's eyes glistened, a mixture of relief, joy, and vulnerability spilling over. "Emma, I was afraid," he admitted. afraid that revealing everything, my wealth, my past, my world, would push you away. But now I see, love doesn't retreat from truth. It embraces it even when it's complicated, even when it's messy. They embraced, the city's skyline stretching endlessly behind them, a silent witness to the union of two worlds that had seemed irreconcilable. For the first time, Jake allowed himself to be fully seen, not as a billionaire or a streetwise mechanic, but as a man willing to risk everything for love. The following weeks were a blend of discovery and intimacy. Emma met the inner circles of Jake's life, his philanthropic partners, his loyal staff, even a few old friends who had long wondered about the elusive man who had withdrawn from society. She saw the weight of responsibility he carried, but also the joy, the generosity, and the authentic passion that drove him, and in every moment she remained grounded, a reminder of authenticity amidst opulence. Jake, in turn, became immersed in Emma's world. He volunteered alongside her in hospital programs, observed her care for patients with quiet admiration, and learned to appreciate the small, simple victories that defined her daily life. The contrast between their worlds became a bridge rather than a barrier, a testament to the power of love to transcend circumstance. One evening, as they watched the sunset from the rooftop of Jake's penthouse, Emma leaned her head against his shoulder. "You know," she said softly, "I almost didn't see you for who you really were at first. But I'm glad I did, and I'm glad you let me in." Jake kissed her forehead gently, his heart full. "I should be the one thanking you, Emma. You reminded me that love isn't about appearances or power. It's about courage, trust, and choosing each other every day, no matter the obstacles." As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of gold and crimson, they made a silent vow to face whatever the future held together. Wealth, fame, and societal expectations no longer mattered. What mattered was honesty, connection, and the kind of love that had the power to heal, transform, and endure. The story of Emma and Jake, the nurse who saw a man's heart beyond his circumstances, and the billionaire who risked everything to find authentic love, became more than a fleeting encounter. It became a testament to the extraordinary in the ordinary, the beauty of vulnerability, and the courage it takes to embrace a love that defies expectation. And as they walked hand in hand into the twilight, both knew that the world outside could continue its chaos. But within their hearts, they had found a home, complete, unguarded, and everlasting.